But
Okay.
because I have to talk to this guy.
Okay. We're on Mem Zayin Amud Aleph, Yuma 47.
Usted no lo va a mover igual esto ahora.
No, todavía no. Lo voy a menear hasta, por ejemplo, voy a venir el lunes a poner la segunda, porque mañana no puedo.
Sí.
Entonces, el lunes, el martes vengo a poner la última mano.
¿Al martes también?
Sí, y hay que esperar 2 días para ponerlo.
El lunes no vienen.
O el lunes sí. Yo el lunes vengo, no.
Okay.
No, por mí no hay problema.
El lunes y martes. Y el martes también viene.
Sí.
Okay.
Entonces tienen 2, por ejemplo, si llama, tal vez pueda venir rápido el técnico a arreglar.
Sí, eso no tengo problema.
Llámalo entonces que venga.
Sí.
Ajá, para que lo arregle, porque es mejor que lo arregle a que estarle poniendo esa batea ahí abajo.
Okay.
Ahora que tengo el freezer repleto.
Good morning, Walter.
No necesita levantar.
We are on Yuma Mem Zayin
Para ponerle, no sé qué me dio, porque lo tengo que importante.
47.
Y ver cuánta agua sacó.
Hotzio lo takaf et hamach.
Okay.
We're now at the point where they brought for the Kohen Gadol from the room that had the Ktoires, a pan of Ktoires and a spoon. Chafan malo chafnav, he dug in with his 2 hands into the Ktoires, and he took and placed it, v'nosan l'toch he put it into the empty spoon. Hagadol lefi gadol, hakadol lefi katno. If a Kohen Gadol was very big, he took a lot. If he was small and his hands were small, he took a little. Kacha yamidas, that was the measurement. Then, notala samachta biyamino, he carried the pan of the coals in his right hand, ve'atakaf b'smolo, and the spoon full of ktoires with his left hand. So the Gemara says, "Machta tanale." Why are we discussing the coal pan again? We already discussed that. It said, "Natalas machta." He took the coal pan. The other rosh mizbech l'chayte v'yar. We already said he went up to the mizbech. He put the coals in the pan. What is this machta? So the Gemara explains this Mishnah is a different pan. Hasam over there is machta the gechalim. We're going to need to burn the ktoros, so we need coals to burn it. So there he went up with a coal pan to fill with coals from the mizbeach. That's that pan. Hacha machta the ktoros. Here we're talking about a pan filled with ktoros that they brought to him, that he could take with his hands the ktoros, the tanya. Hotzilo kaf reikon. They brought him a empty spoon, melishkas hakelim, from the office of the kelim. Umachta gedusha shel ktoros, melishkas pesaftinas, and they brought him a pan full of ktoros from the house of the aftinas who made the ktoros. So. Why do we need a spoon? Why couldn't he just bring it up with his hands? Why do you need to put him in a spoon? The pasuk says he takes a handful of ktoros and he brings it into the Kodesh Kadoshim. What's the spoon? The Gemara says, Mishum Deloy Afshar. It's not physically possible without a spoon. Because what should he do? Na'ayel v'hadar na'ayel. If he's carrying the ktoros and he leaves the machta of coals outside, and he brings that into the Kodesh Kodashim, and then he goes outside, he brings the pan a second time. The Torah says he goes to the base of Kodesh Kodashim once, not twice. Nishkala lektoris b'choifna v'nachtila machtala. Should he leave the ktoris in his hands and place the pan of coals on top? V'leia, let him go in that way. Kimoti hasa mechilavit. How is he going to go? Nishkala b'shine. Should he hold the pan in his mouth? V'nachtila machta. Because otherwise he can't carry it with the ktoris and the pan on top of it. So he's going to hold it in his teeth, the pan, and walk in with the ktoris in his hands. That's not a very covetic way to present yourself in front of a king and in front of Kodesh Baruch Hu. You're going to do that? So you can't go in that way. So since physically you can't do it, the Nesiim, the Miluim, when they inaugurated the Mishkan, they kafachas, right? They brought in a spoon, kafachas meleach ketoras. So they did it the same way. So then the Gemara explains, notal samach to be yamin v'sakaf v'smol. The Mishnah said you carried the pan of coals in your right hand, and the ketoras with your left hand. So yetziva ba'ara v'giyur b'shmei shmaya. So you can have a full Jewish citizen on the ground and a ger in the Shamayim, meaning you've got it completely backwards. The mitzvah of the day is the ketoras. Normally, you're supposed to use your right hand for a primary mitzvah, like when you shake the lulav. You gotta have it in your right hand. Mitzvahs are done with the right hand. Why are you putting the spoon with the ketoras in the left hand? And for the Gemara Zuma Ruba v'Zuma Etes, the ketoras was much lighter, and the coal pan was much heavier. Since the right hand is much dominant in people, they had him take the heavier thing in the right. Now, even in cases where they were equal in weight, Kamaisa Rav Shimon ben Kimchis, there was a very large Kohen Gadol named Rav Shmuel ben Kimchis where he, with his hands, was able to take so much ketoras that it weighed as much as the pan. Still, zu chama v'zu tzonenes. The pan is hot, full of hot coals. It's harder to carry something that's hot. So that's why they carried the kafak ketoras in the left. Since you brought up Rav Yishmael ben Kimchis, we'll say some things about him. Amr alav Rav Yishmael ben Kimchis, shayichofen arba kavin b'mloi chafnav. When he put his hands in the ketoras, he was able to get 4 kav of ketoras, which is a lot. V'omer kol hanoshim zerdu, v'zered ima ala lagag. That means Rav Yishmael's mother chose the best. She got the biggest Kohen Gadol. Ikadi Amri, but our son, in his crib, or I'm sorry. She ate, her flour was always clean that she ate. That way, she had a very nutritious pregnancy, which led to a very large baby. Rabbi Yonasan, Rav Yonasan, Rabbi Yechiel, arson yafal lechoila. Arson, which is this fine flour, is good for sick people, and therefore it provides better nutrition. This is like a nickname for Shechva Zera, that she chose a good Shechva Zera in order to have such a large child. Rami, Ksiv, Vatazreni Chayla Milchama. David HaMelech says, you planted me, right? You chose basically which Shechva Zera to make for me. Uksiv HaMazreni Chayla Milchama. Another place says it with Ta'azreni, like you help me. Zeratani vizerstani. You chose well in terms of which shechvazer to use, and you encouraged me. Amar Lava Yishmael ben Kimchis, Pamachas siper dvarim al im aravi echad bashuk. Rabbi Yishmael was a Kohen Gadol. He was speaking to a certain Arab in the marketplace. V'nitzat tzinor mipiv al b'gadav, and some spit from his mouth landed on the Kohen Gadol's clothing. V'nichnas yeshevav achi v'shimesh, so he became tamei because the spit of a non-Jew, the Chachamim made a gzeira like ketuma zav, so he couldn't serve as the Kohen Gadol for Yom Kippur. So his brother Yeshevav served instead. The Rasa Iman Shnei Chanim Gdolim B'Yom Echad, and the mother was zoicha to have two of her children as Kohen Gadol in one day. Shuvam Alav Yishmael ben Kimchis, Pamachas Yotzav V'Siper Al Hegmon Echad Bashuk. He spoke to a certain Roman in the marketplace. V'nitzat tzinor mipiv al b'gadav, and the Romans spit on him, so he became tamei. V'nichlas Yosef im achi v'shimesh tachtov. His brother Yosef served as the replacement Kohen Gadol. The Rasa Iman Shnei Kohanim Gdolim B'Yom Echad. The mother was zocha to have two Kohen Gadol in the same day. Torah Banan. Shiva Banim Hayul Kimchis. Kimchis is the mother's name, and she had 7 sons. She was zoicha that all 7 became the Kohen Gadol. What did you do that you were zoicha to this fact that 7 of your children became Kohen Gadol? So even though a married woman, when she covers her hair, it should be when she goes out in public, so other men shouldn't see her hair, she was matriach to always cover her hair even when she was inside her own home, which is an extra measure of tznius. There are a lot of people who did that and didn't succeed, like you, to have Kohen Gadol's from their children. So you had siyata d'shmaya from Shemayim. Harabanan. Bekumtso.
Ernie, this must have been the second base Mikdash, not the first one.
Second base of Mikdash, absolutely, because we know there were only 18 Kohen Gadol in the first. Right. In the second, there were hundreds. So yes. So I was thinking the same thing, that we know that a lot of them were not tzaddikim. Right? They bought.
But you see that over here you had 7 who were.
But you see the way it was. This wasn't an example. It could be that Yishmael served for many years, but because he got tamei one day, one of his brothers had to serve only for one day. Then once he's not tamei anymore, he takes over. So it's not an example where the guy died. It's an example. So it could be that all 7 of the children became Kohen Gedolim in that manner, where somebody became tamei and they filled in for just one day. They're still called that they served as the Kohen Gadol. Torah Rabbana. Bekumtso. When you ve'irimi menu bekumtso, misolos hamincha. This is just regular mincha. When you do kmitza, kmitza is you go in with your hand into the flour. I'm showing you with my hand, and you gather the flour in your hand. That's the kmitza, and then you clean off with the thumb and the small finger, and you put that into a kli, and then that gets nizrak on the mizbeach, and the remaining flour gets eaten. So by kmitza, it says bekumtza, with your hand. You don't make a measurement with a kli to go into a kli with like a measuring device. You go with your hand. So, we asked the following question. We just learned in our Mishnah that on Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol goes in with his two hands and scoops up Ktoiris. So can you make a kli for that? Maybe by the mincha hasamud ichsiv bekumtso to tell you can't use a kli. Aval hacha deloy ksiv, it only says b'chafnav, so maybe you can make a kli. Because elam lo chafnav tor samim dakalo. Well, since it says you have to use your hands to scoop, maybe you can't use a kli. O dilma yolif, excuse me. Aval hacha deloy ksiv b'chafnav elam lo chafnav. It just says fill up your hands. So maybe you can make a kli. O dilma yolif mlom lomi kumtso, and maybe it says mole kumtso and mole chafnav, so we make a hekesh. And just like by the kmitza, you can't use a kli, so here as well you can't use a kli. Toshma kachai sami dos. Mishnah said when he puts his hands in, that's the measurement. So my lav shem rotzalas mida acheres oise. Perhaps from here we'll learn that if you want to make a kli, you can. Versus lo hachi kamer kachai achoizer v'choifta lifnim. He did the same thing when he got into the Kodesh Kodoshim. He used his hands. Shemamina choifen v'choizer v'choifen. That you can go in and do scoop and do it again. So the Gemara says no. Dilma shem ratza lasos mida oisa. It's not a proof that you can't use a kli. Maybe if you want to use a kli, you can. Or yinami shlo yichasav v'shlo yoser, you can't add or detract. Torabonim. Malok kumtso yachal mevuretz. Let's say it's sticking out from the flour. Talmud loymar bekumtso. You only use your kmitza. Maybe you can use just the tips of your fingers. The way people put their hands in and do kmitza. Like we said, you take 3 fingers, a piece of yad of a koimetz, the way we described. When they made a mincha like a waffle, which was hard, fried, you have to clean off the parts that are sticking out from your 3 fingers. Moichek begudlo milmala, he cleans it out with his thumb on top of its boktana, the pinky milmata. The zui avodah kosher mikdash is one of the hardest avodot in the base of mikdash because it's not easy to clean up those pieces sticking out because they're hard. So the Gemara wants to know zui v'sula, is that the hardest avodah in the base of mikdash? V'ha'ika malika, you have the avoda of using your fingernail and puncturing the bird's neck from behind, which is also described as an avoda kosher. And v'ha'ika chafina, when you go into the Kodesh Kodoshim, we're going to see it's a very hard process there, what he did with the second chafina when they placed the ketores on the coals. Elazu, he may have those kosher. This is one of the difficult. There's other difficult jobs. Amrav Yechnon, boy, Rav Yeshua ben Uzzah, Beina Beinayim, Shlomo Tzomau. So you do kmitza. Look, you do kmitza with your hand. So you may have some flour stuck between your fingers. That's called the Beina Beinayim. What's the din regarding that? So, the gavoy, that's sticking out towards your palm, lo tabarlocha devai komets. That's a part of the kmitza. Divroi, the part of the flour that's on this side of your fingers, lo tabarlocha devada shirayim. That would be considered shirayim. Ki tabarlocha debeni beni. But I want to know the flour in between the fingers. My. So we see we're in doubt what it is. Now, if it's Safik, Hechinovid, Amrav Chanina, Makter koimetz lechude tchila. First, he dumps the koimetz into a kli and he puts it on the fire. V'hader ben abinaim, and then he takes the flour from between the fingers and makter it on its own. Now, why does that work? If you offer the flour between the fingers first, well, since it's a suffix that it might be shirayim, leftover flour, dilma shirayim ninu, v'havalu shirayim shechasru ben kmitz laktara. That becomes shirayim that you lessened the amount of shirayim between kmitz and laktara. V'amamar shirayim shechasru ben kmitz laktara and maktir alem zakoymes. You don't, if you have shirayim that somehow you lost some of the shirayim, you're not allowed to be maktir even the initial ketores, the initial koimets. So freight the Gemara, but if you do it the way you wanted us to do it, which is to be maktir the initial kmitza, and then maktir this stuff between the fingers, hashtanami ikrikan kol shemenu liishim hareu v'val taktiru. So once you have shirayim, you're not allowed to put shirayim on the mizbeach either. So once you threw the koimetz, this is shirayim. So it sounds like either way it's not going to work. You make a tanai before you throw the bein abinayim, and you say, if it's ktoires, then good. If it's koimetz, good. And if it's shirayim, it should be like wood, not like the korban. Rabbi Eliezer, the time of Rabbi Eliezer Omer, l'reach dichoach, iya tamala, aval tamala l'shumetzi. Sometimes you can put something on the mizbeach as a status of wood, because there might be some kind of technical problem to put it on the mizbeach. So l'shumetzim, you can put it there. Hanich Rabbi Eliezer. Fine. That problem that we had, what do you do with the Bein Abinayim, works according to the sheet of Rabbi Eliezer. El Rabbanon, who don't hold that you can put things l'shumetzim, ma ikalamema. Rav Mary, you know what? Not every kohen did kmitza. They found kohanim that were heavy, and they had a lot of fatty fingers, the kamsi shmeni. So when they did the kmitza, there's so much fat in between their fingers that you couldn't get any flour in there. And therefore you never had the problem. Oh, hashtag asis la'achi. Now that you gave me that teretz, Rabbi Eliezer nami lechatchila the kamsi shmeni. So everybody agreed. Even Rabbi Eliezer, who gave us this teretz, do it in two manners, two stages. No, he agreed it's much better to have just a fat kohen do it. Bein abinaim poshat mochatz pizer chishev chafinas chaver simen. Boy Rav Papa. Bein abinaim shamalei chafnav ma'u. Up until now, we analyzed doing kmitza for a mincha. What about the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, when he put his hands into the ketores to scoop up the ketores? What if there was some ketores stuck between his fingers? So the Gemara might come a boile. What's your shaila? If we learned a hekesh, because it says malo chafnav and it says malo kumtzo, so then you have the same machlokas that we had here by kmitza. So Rav Papa hachi boile. This is Rav Papa's question. It says malo chafnav v'hevi ba'inan v'ha'ika. The Torah says, scoop up with your hands and bring in. And so who cares if you have some ketores in your fingers? You fulfilled malach chafna ve'evi. Oy dilma v'lokach ve'evi ba'inin v'haleka. But since it says you have to take in the lokach, and now you're adding some because there's stuff between your fingers, and you didn't have kavanah for that, so maybe it's not considered a good velokach vehevi. Teku. So we don't have an answer. Amrav Papa Pshitali, that Malakunsos Kirikansi Inshi, when you do kmitza, it's like the regular people do kmitza. But based on that, boy Rav Papa, comments Barosha, it's Posov Mal. What if you didn't do it the way people do kmitza? You did it just with the tips of your fingers. Or what if you did milmata l'malamal? Or you went in not the normal way, you went in backwards. Or minat study mal. You went in from the sides. Does it invalidate? The Gemara says, no, teku, it's a suffix. Or Rav Papa Pshitali, Melachafnaf, when you go in and scoop, the way people scoop. So, boy, Rav Papa, Chafan Baroshe, let's say you scooped only with the tips of your fingers, or milmata l'malamau, or from the bottom up, or minatzad, from the side. Chafan bezu v'zu, let's say you did it independent, you didn't do it with both hands, you did it with one hand and the other hand, and then you put it into both hands together. Kevin zuetzel zumau. In all these questions, teku. The Rambam says if you did it in all these fashions, lechatchila, you shouldn't do the haktorah. But if you did the haktorah with this way, it'll work. Because we answer teku, you shouldn't do it lechatchila, but b'diavad it's kosher. And the same thing by a mincha. If you did the kmitza with these strange fashions, lechatchila, you shouldn't be makter it. But if you did makter it, it works. Okay, gentlemen, we're going to learn tomorrow at 9:15.